Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting how to use, hold on, let me get into presentation mode. Do y'all remember how I haven't done
I think
Google
you click
Drive in so
slideshow up
long?
on your top right.
How to get, oh, here we go. Haha. Okay, so I know we have a couple people here today. I'm going to be presenting on the work that I do inside of my job position. I'll touch base on like job interviewing tips, lessons that I've learned over time. There's a couple people here. We'll make this an informal conversation. If there's any questions, just pause me, ask questions. I have I did this presentation for the Georgia State for Dr. Wanders' class for the Georgia State Nutrition Program. But really what I tried to gather together is all the things that I racked my brain around, things that I for the years that I'm like, oh, I wish I had known this beforehand, and pull that all together. Um, so my name is Diana Myers. I'm a registered dietitian and the nutrition health educator at the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. And I am actually right down the street from y'all. I was showing Justina this. That's the Capitol right there. So our building is right around the corner. And I used to take MARTA down to the Georgia State Station, and now I take MARTA down to the Georgia State Station and just go upstairs to my building. So I just ended up, bumping over right to our neighboring building as well. So I'll touch base on my path and how I got to where I'm doing right now before I go into talking more about my job and what that looks like. So I jumping back from what this slide says. So I always, when I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to do something nutrition related, but I also thought that I wanted to do nursing. So I went to undergrad, went for my nursing degree, got into the portion where we were in the hospital and realized I didn't want to be in the hospital and I wanted to be serving others and I wanted to be, giving back to my community, but I didn't want to be in that hospital setting. So I really took some time to analyze what I wanted to do. I had lots of questions in my mind on, do I have to jump back into this or do I need to continue going through school and figure it out later? And so I ended up taking some time off. I went and traveled for a couple months around Southeast Asia and then ended up nannying for about, I think at that point it was about 3 years. And at that time, I had the opportunity to attend a couple of conferences. So I had attended the Georgia Organics Conference. Um, I was working with this young boy that I was nannying and really getting into the garden with him and serving him different foods. And we were doing taste testing and all these things that I'm doing in my career now and educating people on doing. And that really led me into my decision where it's like, okay, it's time for me to go back to school. I'm ready to go back to school and I really want to go back and do nutrition. And so I had the opportunity I applied for the Georgia State University program and had the opportunity to complete it was the last didactic program in dietetics there. And while I was doing my undergrad, I did a farm to school internship at Georgia Organics, which ironically, so the supervisors of that internship are now the people that I work with on a day in and day out basis with some of the farm to ECE work that we do, which I'll talk about in a couple next slides. I also was co-president of the Panther Food Recovery Network, which I think is still on campus. I think they're still strong in what they're doing. And I also we're just talking about the garden. I was the Nutrition Student Network garden officer as well. And like Justina was saying, it was a big challenge. It was at the top of the urban life building. There was not a ton of support from Georgia State at that time, and so it was a big challenge to figure out how to grow things and what to grow in a really small space where you had to go into the bathroom to get the water from the sink. And there was a lot of challenges. And those challenges are things that I take into the work that I do now when I'm working with an organization to start a garden and I can recognize and empathize with some of those challenges that we face as well. So it's exciting. Blakely, I think, yep, I see you on here. So she was mentioning that how robust the garden is nowadays. So I'll have to see some pictures and come on a tour and see that as well. Once I finished my undergrad, I transitioned into getting my master's at Georgia State in the coordinated program to become a registered dietitian. And I really emphasize my focus. And part of that coordinated program is you get to choose your enrichment courses. So I really emphasize my focus and my projects and any of my presentations or research articles that I was looking at on sustainability and farm to school, farm to early care and education, food insecurity, food systems, local foods, food waste, public health, really anything in that bubble was something that I was really interested and wanted to do. And I remember I was really interested in going the sustainability path, and I had a conversation with my Georgia Organic supervisor at the time, who's actually now one of my co-chairs that I work with on the Farm to ECE Coalition. And we had a really good, enlightening conversation where she was like, yes, you're not technically going into a job where you're like, I'm doing sustainability, but at the same time, you're going into a job where you're raising the youngest generation to be environmental folks who are taking care of their environment, who are in tune with their the garden and growing things and connecting with their food system and having outdoor play. So you really have the opportunity to bring that into their lives and into their system and make that accessible and equitable in their practices and bringing it into a childcare arena. As I mentioned, I am emphasized community and public health through my rotations that I did. And my master's project was to create 4 Harvest of the Month kits for early care and education settings. And looking back, I'll go in depth on the work that I do. But looking back, a lot of the work that I do is very public health nutrition minded. So it does benefit me to have a RD credentials. But the team that I'm growing are really public health nutrition minded folks. So I think, if you're in the midst of deciding, do I need to go and become an RD? Do I need to go to public health? Do I need to take some time off? What career am I going on? I think those are all things to consider and conversations that you can have with various professionals as well. I always pop this slide in here because this is just an iteration of my drive and what drives me and what teaches me every day. I have a 10-month-old and I have a 13-year-old, so I'm learning on both sides of the spectrum of how to, encourage those healthy habits, how to get them connected to the garden. And, a middle schooler and an infant are very different age ranges and ways that we connect to kids. And they teach me a lot every day and how to do some of the training sessions that I do at work. So overarchingly, I work for the Georgia, as mentioned, I work for the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. And kind of a brief spiel is we are responsible for meeting the child care and early education needs of Georgia's children and their families. We administer the nationally recognized Georgia's pre-K program. We're the licensing agency, so we have child care services that creates our licensing for all of our child care centers and our family daycare homes across Georgia. We administer Georgia Child Care and Parent Services programs, which is part of the funding to support low-income families for putting their children into high-quality learning environments when they're young. We have 2 federal child nutrition programs, which I'll touch base on the next slides. And we also manage the quality rated program, which is a community powered child rating system, but really it's the level up above the regulations. So you have childcare licensing regulations that you have to do as part of the requirements. And then when you take it a step above and beyond, if you're adding taste tests and food education and those types of things, you're really increasing your ability to provide quality childcare for our youngest learners across Georgia. So that's kind of overarchingly, I like to say that you can kind of look at our department similar to the Department of Education that serves the K through 12 space. We serve the 0 through 5 space, so in similar ratings as well. So the 2 programs that we have, so one that we have, and actually I might scooch this way so y'all can hear me a little bit better so it's not getting, just give me 1 second. I'm in the office right now, so I apologize for background noise. But one of the programs that we serve is the Child and Adult Care Food Program. It's a federally funded program by the USDA, so the money comes from our federal United States Department of Agriculture. Gets given down to our state agency, which is the Department of Early Care and Learning, and then we distribute that funding to what we call sponsors. And those sponsors are the ones that either have sites below them that are serving the food or are directly serving the food themselves. So the interesting thing about the Child and Adult Care Food Program is that it serves a variety of different age populations. So we serve 0 through 5-year-old age range. We serve at-risk after-school snacks, so that could be anywhere from 0 through 12-year-olds. We serve adults in adult daycare centers, so that's a big need where there's a lot of There's a lot of funding and meals that are going towards Meals on Wheels that are serving seniors, but the adult daycare center is a needed population to serve those eligible, nutritious, nourishing meals. We serve children, homeless youth in emergency shelters, 0 through 18. So we really are overarchingly, the programs that I work with are serving 0 through 5 year olds, but really we serve a variety of different populations and really integrate our programs into those high need areas. And as with the National School Lunch Program, as with other federal child nutrition programs, there are meal patterns that you have to follow, that you have to serve to be able to receive a reimbursement for that meal. So you have to serve, for snack, for instance, you have to serve 2 of 5 categories, either fruits, vegetables, grains, meat and meat alternates, or milk. So there's a variety of different requirements, which can be challenging at times as well for our organizations in understanding what those exact requirements are. We serve the summer food service program, and we actually I should have put the logo on this slide, but we actually just recently rebranded our program. It's still the same summer food service program. It's the same USDA program, but it's called Happy Helping. So it's Georgia's version of that summer food service program. And these are sites that are set up throughout the summer months. So they start in May, they end in August, if not a little bit later, depending on when the school system goes back. But these are the programs that help serve our youth when they don't have access to those meals. A lot of times, I'm sure you've heard in some of your classes as kids, or you've worked with youth who have been in the situation, or you find these programs to be helpful, that these programs are there to serve during those off months. So rather than, when kids don't have access to receiving those National School Lunch Program meals, or it's a break, if there is our programs, or the summer food service program also starts back up if there's any emergency. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a lot of waivers to have that start up since children were working from home. So there's a lot of different variety in our program, but really overarchingly, it serves those summer gaps when kids are out of school to make sure that they're still receiving those nourishing meals. And these programs are actually serve the 0 through 18 population. So any child ages 0 through 18, no matter income eligibility, is able to go to a site and receive a healthy, nourishing meal during the day. The other hat that I wear, I have multiple hats in the work that I do, is farm to early care and education. So, we were just talking about gardening and the impact of that, and really having that closed loop system of bringing that into the food pantry. And farm to early care initiatives really connect our youngest learners and their families to healthy, locally grown foods and support farmers in their communities. So it's bringing in a variety of different options. So it could be bringing in taste testing of local foods. It could be bringing in local farmers to talk to your early care organization. It could be bringing in gardening and having a garden on site. It could be eating locally grown foods and meals and snacks, or meeting local farmers. And the one thing I'll say about the local farmers is we've had child care organizations who write thank you notes to their local farmers, and the kids look at them like they're celebrities. And it's awesome to see that and to be able to build that connection between, hey, my apple didn't come from such and such, the grocery store or Kroger or whatever it may be. It actually came from BJ Orchard, which is up in North Georgia, like building that connection between where their food comes from. And the benefit of those things too is you're providing hands-on experiential learning, and you're also teaching them mathematics skills through measurement and food preparation, and really getting that hands-on activity. You're teaching them science and biology through observation and looking at things grow, and math as you go out and measure, the tops of the carrots, and looking at roots versus stems versus plants. And, I think y'all are in school right now, and there's a lot of things that you're having to read up on, or, study for tests, or study for this such and such thing. But it's so important, and I'm sure you all can relate to this, that when you have that hands-on educational learning, when you're experiencing those things, when you have your hands in the dirt, when you're touching those things, when you're practicing a counseling technique, whatever it may be, that is so much more impactful and so much more of a way to teach, where things can be learned and remembered. So I tried to kind of gather around what my job looks like and what my job entails. And I think I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and we were just talking about how there, your job may start off as, one subset of job responsibilities, but really there are opportunities to grow that and help to build that. And so I started off in my job, I had a certain set of job responsibilities that I had to maintain. And then I've just continued to grow that, whether it be working groups or partnerships or various things. I think there's so much opportunity when you go into a job to see what growth is available. Um, so to kind of touch base on this, that just gives you perspective of the work that I'm doing. Is one of the things that I do is event planning. So for example, this past weekend, we had a farm to early care and education 101 training. And that training was an opportunity to really bring together a network of interested individuals for farm to early care and education to do some action planning, to create SMART goals, to really learn some realistic ways on how to implement farm to ECE. So a lot of that is more of the planning, the logistical stuff, working the behind the scenes, setting up the virtual meetings, sending out the reminders, like a lot of those project management, event planning skills. We also have a variety of different things like the summit, CACFP week, which is really a week to highlight and spotlight farm CACFP and bring awareness to those programs. We have October Farm to School Month, so that's a month where we have the opportunity to plan events and really celebrate farm to ECE, and not just from the celebration side, but really connect with our legislatures to make them aware of these programs and the benefit and importance of these programs. The other aspect, and as you'll notice, a lot of these things really intertwine within each other. So I do nutrition education training. So I'm always looking for creative ways to provide this nutrition education. So, kind of overarchingly, we train on the required meal patterns for happy helpings as well as the CACFP. But then we talk about, one of the things that I ask at the end of all of my training sessions are what barriers do you face? What supports do you need? What further trainings do you need? What are the best times for training? So really eliciting that feedback from our customers who are on our child nutrition programs to best serve them and support them in their programs as well. We have a Cooking Matters for Child Care Professionals coming up. Y'all may have heard of Cooking Matters. It works with families, it works with adults, it works with teens. I know, where was I? I think I was at Marietta City Schools where they had a teen program that they were doing. And so they were, teaching youth. It was an 8-week long program where they were teaching youth how to cook food and using knife skills and, sauteing things and all of those variety of cooking methods. So we have one set up that's specific for the childcare industry. Up and coming, we have physical activity webinars, teaching about eating environments and how to foster learning within mealtime, as well as positive eating environments and not forceful eating environments. Another portion is this is honestly one of my favorite things is fostering and collaborating with internal and external partnerships. I think there's a lot of ways to partner in the work that any of us are doing to see how we can expand the reach, expand the work that we're doing. I think with anything as it relates to not just child nutrition programs, but as it relates to increasing food security, so decreasing food insecurity, it's important to connect with other partner organizations so that you can maximize the work that you're doing, not be duplicative in the work, and really be effective with all of the work that you're doing. So growing those partnerships to see what's available and where those can come from. And a lot of times it takes just kind of sometimes it's an informal conversation where it's like, oh, you have gardens in SNAP Ed. We have gardens in our work that we're doing. Like, where are your gardens? How can we connect families to them? And really having those conversations as well. Another thing is providing technical assistance. So this is kind of, this was definitely the learning curve that I had in my job, where it's really learning those regulations for any child nutrition program. Any federal program that you have, when you receive that kind of funding, have those specific regulations that you have to follow, whether it be procurement practices, which is not necessarily under my realm, but serving the meal patterns or looking at nutrition facts panels to make sure that those items are whole grain. Or, I remember thinking it sounded easy from the outside, but then when you get specific questions, you want to make sure that you answer those correctly. So that's always a big learning curve and just getting started with some of those programs. I also serve on a variety of committees and working groups. So one of them mentioned down here is the nutrition and physical activity assessment. That's an assessment that we've had a working group for about 2.5 years now of expert individuals who are providing their feedback on research back as it relates to nutrition, physical activity, variety of categories, looking at healthy hydration, looking at reducing screen time, looking at, I'm trying to think all the categories, breastfeeding, foods that are served often, foods to limit, all of those variety of categories and what's being served and done inside of our childcare facilities. And then another aspect that I do is marketing. So that's creating newsletter materials and social media posts and press releases and any of those things that, really get our information out in the community and spread and build that awareness. And I think the most important thing about our marketing is knowing our target audience. Are we targeting our legislatures? Are we targeting our families? Are we targeting more of our childcare providers? And really recognizing the barriers that they're facing, especially in the childcare industry after COVID-19 pandemic, some of those barriers that they're facing and just the burnout that they're facing, and how do we, provide messaging and ideas that they can do that are easy to implement, that are cost effective, and how do we best care for them as well. A couple other portions are, and this happened a little bit more when I was in the office, but our employee wellness activities. So really connecting with our staff and in our organization, and sharing recipes, or really just inspiring people to have some of those healthy habits. I know, especially when we all went to working from home, it's really, I don't walk up the stairs up and down, up to floor 8 anymore. So how do we get that physical activity in and really create that, foster that environment, not just for our facilities that we serve in childcare, but also for our employees in the state as well. I also apply for and lead different federal grants. So we had one that ended it was the middle of last year. So in June of last year, that was a meal pattern training grant for the CACFP. We also are currently in the process of implementing a USDA Farm to School grant. And with that grant, let me grab my phone so I can check the time. With that grant, we have a lot of different initiatives, and I think a lot of the work that I do is getting creative with that. So we applied for the USDA grant in December 2019, and we received the USDA grant in July of 2020, and the world had completely changed. So it's really getting creative. How do we switch to virtual platforms? How do we really transition what we're doing to best serve the community and where they're at and where their needs are? So there's a lot of creativity and problem solving, and in itself, just managing a grant is a lot of project management. It's always a good thing to have more money to be able to apply your grants, but it's also a lot of work to be able to put that money towards different programs and lead those programs and those projects. And I kind of went into this somewhat naive, where I was like, oh man, like we can do this. And then we lost a couple of employees, and it was hard to manage those programs. So it's really, it's always good to have that money, and it's important to have that support system surrounding you and that team to help implement that grant work as well. The other work that I do is I'm one of the co-chairs of the Farm to Early Care and Education Coalition. So really coalescing a network of over 40 organizations across Georgia. So that's state agencies, that's healthcare programs, that's universities, that's for-profit organizations, not-for-profit organizations, childcare facilities, farmers, parents, a variety of different groups to coalesce those resources, build a network, and really, we just finished our strategic planning process. So really be strategic in the work that we do, making sure that we're serving our communities, making sure that we're being equitable in the work that we do, and providing our trainings and our professional development. So really looking at things from that lens as we move forward in the work that we're doing as well. I also assess regular growth opportunities. So we just recently, this was the end of last year, put through a proposal to bring physical activity into our division. So we are transitioning into developing 2 new positions and increasing my team that I have underneath me because I've been a one-woman show for the time being, and so it'll be nice to have some additional support and really maximize the work that we can do because there's such a need and such an interest out there as it relates to this nutrition work. Um, and finally, like I said, looking at different grant opportunities. So, what are grants that we can apply for? Whether it be grants that we can apply for or grants that we can, receive and then distribute mini grants down to our child care facilities to help support them in their farm to ECE work as well. Last two things, I know there's this, I think with any organization you're going to work with, you're going to wear multiple hats. So I'm really trying to give this as a perspective of those different skills that you can foster and hone in on the work that you're doing. The last two things are I do resource development, which is serving meals for individuals with, like, one resource example is serving meals for individuals with chewing and swallowing difficulties. And so this is more so for our adult populations that we serve in adult daycare centers, as well as managing allergies or tips for picky eaters. So really, any resource that I see fit or that we get multiple questions about is something that we're able to create and best support our audience. And then lastly, I was just looking at a table to move because this group is talking. And then lastly is supervised nutrition public health intern. So from Georgia State University, I have an intern who will be with us through the end of May, and she's been really beneficial to help us drive our marketing aspect of our event, to really look at the data and the statistics as it relates to the target counties that we're hoping to do some more work in, and really connect those contacts and connect that work as well. Okay, does anybody have any? I'm just going to pop in before I shift over to this because I know it's a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions at this time?
I don't see any questions in the chat. If anyone else has questions in the chat, questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. No, I think you can keep going if you like.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, y'all. Okay, so I was just going to talk about some of the job skills needed because I think with any position you talk about, when you're looking at a job description or you're looking at job responsibilities, you're seeing the requirements and the responsibilities, but you don't necessarily always see the skills required. Maybe you see the schooling background or the education experience or things like that. But just something to consider. So, in the work that we're doing in my job, it really requires the need to have a level of organization. So maintaining that organization because there's just so much going on at all times. So really maintaining those buckets so that you can have that that ability to get all of your work complete and really do it in an effective manner. Also, I write. This was last year, so in May, we found out I went on maternity leave, had my little one, and we found out 2 days after my due date that we were going to be working from home permanently. So feverishly, I called my mom and I was like, we got to clear out my office. We cleared out my office. I had her a week later, and we've been working from home ever since. So I think in my job, it's always required a level of ability to be self-driven in the work that we're doing because I don't have, I don't, which I appreciate and I like, I don't have somebody above me like micromanage me, tell me exactly what I need to do every day of the week. It's really me, a day in the life looks like me having meetings and getting the work that I need to do done and really prioritizing the work that I need to do. So it definitely requires a high level of self-driven and motivation. Also, the work any of this work requires a level of an interest of giving back to the greater community, giving back to those around you. And I think I loved the work that I did at Georgia Organics, and I was much more. I was not necessarily boots on the ground, but kind of in between. And the work that I'm doing now is more at a higher level in terms of the state of Georgia as a whole. So it's looking at policies, looking at those things that would impact the state of Georgia as a whole. And so I think that's really important to have the ability to have that detail oriented mindset, but also that big picture mindset and looking at the work that we're doing. It also requires a level of collaboration. As I mentioned, there's lots of internal and external partnerships that are always available to form. My team personally in my nutrition division that I work with, we have, we have multiple divisions in DECAL, but I have a team of, where are we at right now? We're probably, I think we have 25 people, but they're all doing different portions of the work. And so even having teamwork to see what that looks like as a whole, so I can see where I best fit in, is really important. An interest in continuous growth and an ability to communicate with a variety of audiences, as I mentioned, with anything marketing wise, and how we develop and grow our programs. It's important to look at our target audiences in that work as well. And lastly, an importance on focus on building and growing equitable programs and making sure the programs that we're building are serving the communities who really need it, are looking at, how do we develop high quality childcare organizations in some of those communities that are under resources, that best, where we can touch not only the children, but also the families themselves and increase that access to nourishing foods. I put this in here, as I mentioned. This was kind of from when I did the presentation with Dr. Wanders' class. Was, she asked what does the end of life look like, and I put this on here because it's just a smorgasbord. It's whatever meeting is happening on that day. I have certain set meetings, but I really make my day what I need it to be. So it's I've really had to hone in how to prioritize my tasks and not it's easy to do the easy tasks first and push the harder tasks off, but the importance is really to have that self-driven mindset and prioritize the work that needs to be done based on the deadlines or what's the top priority at that time as well, which is always a constant learning experience. Um, some of the challenges are just the work-life balance. And for me, we were kind of having this conversation the other day, is since I work from home, you know, y'all do the same thing. You're working, you're in school, you're bringing your work home. There's not really a separation, and it's hard to. It used to be that I would have my laptop at the office and I'd shut my laptop down and I'd walk out that door and I wouldn't have access to my email. But now I work from home. And so it's really fostering that work life balance. And my family is a good accountability partner from that end. They're always like, okay, it is time for you to end. It is time to be done with this for the day. Also, I think one of the other challenging portions is just the fragmentation of the day. So between meetings, I may have one day where I don't have any meetings. I may have another day where I have 2 to 3 meetings, or I may have another day that it's filled with meetings. And so, as y'all know, when working with projects or anything like that, it takes some time to really get invested in that project and get your focus and get in tune with the work that you're doing during the day. That sometimes that fragmentation and having 30 minutes here or 45 minutes here can be challenging, and it's something that is a constant practice in the skills. Also, another challenge at times can be being the only registered dietitian in the agency. So, this really increases the importance of having conversations with, really being an advocate for the work that you're doing within an organization. So, I am constantly talking to our executive cabinet and our my supervisors, and really talking about the importance of this work and taking any data that is collected or any feedback that is collected and bringing that to the forefront to say, this is why we need to do what we do. This is the gap. This is how we fill those gaps. And really being, being a confident and being an advocate in the work that you're doing as any, even just a nutrition focused individual. Um, Also, another challenge is, as mentioned, is just learning regulations for any federal programs. Every federal program has their own regulations. Some are similar, some are different. But I think that sometimes can be the most intimidating part because they're really big programs and they take a while to learn. And I am now at 3 years of my job, and I finally feel like I am more comfortable with the work, but I'm still constantly learning about those different things. So that's definitely a challenge at times. Another thing is I have always had an interest in growing this work, especially from our state agency perspective. But I don't always have the woman power behind me. So I don't, I'm about to grow my team. I now have an intern who is amazing. And, but I don't always have the capacity to do all the things that I know we are capable of doing that would benefit us as an organization. So that's always can be challenging. And then lastly, one of the challenges is working from home prevents some of those organic conversations for future collaborations. I can't tell you how many times I always say this, I'm like washing my hands at the sink in the bathroom and somebody's talking about, they did such and such. And then we start talking about farm to ECE. And then we're like, hey, can we connect on this? And then they're like, hey, you want to present on this for my division? And it's just that organic conversation that arises. And we don't have that the same way when we're working from home. So I hope to, sometimes I come in the office, like my power actually went out today, which is why I'm in the office. But, I think that it's important to look at the organization that you're thinking about applying to or the job field that you're thinking about applying to and seeing what fits you. If you're more of a homebody, maybe that works exactly with you. If you're somebody who wants to connect with people but also wants to have your own space, maybe that hybrid approach is what you're looking for. Or maybe you want to go full force and you want to be, if you're in a hospital setting or a counseling setting, and you really want to interact with those people as well. So I think it's just important to really recognize your needs and your interests as well. Some of the things that I love about the work that I do is I love working from home. I love being able to get up and be able to be there, not have to get ready in the morning and go in. But I also love the opportunity that I have the opportunity to go in if I'm interested in doing it. I love that no day is exactly the same. My days are just completely different. There's no telling what's going to happen on that day, and I find that a challenge, like an exciting challenge where it's an exciting problem solving that happens during the day. There's always new opportunities and challenges that arise, so the work is constantly changing. It's never the same old, same old. I've always had a personal drive to serve that broader community, and then the work that we're doing, especially with the state agency that serves the entire state of Georgia, we really have the opportunity to support this work and help to build some of those foundations. I love the opportunity to collaborate and grow partnerships within the work that we're doing as well. One of the things that's really important in my work is I feel the support from my supervisor, from directors, from our executive cabinet and our commissioner, that there's interest there. There's not always a knowledge of how to implement that stuff, but there's definitely interest and support, and they recognize the need for these programs and the work that we're doing. And then also as just um, you know, with COVID, there's been a rise in interest in how to garden and nutrition. And, there's a recognition of some of the brokenness in our food system. And so an interest in really being able to self-sustain or support themselves. And so with that, we've had a lot more interest in the training sessions that we've been providing as well, which is always exciting. A couple of learning lessons that I have over the years are, as I mentioned, is learning to prioritize. So it's super easy to knock off those things. You're like, okay, I got 20 things on my to-do list. 10 of them are super easy. I'm going to do them right now. But you have that one most important thing, which is such and such, whatever it may be. It's important to learn to prioritize and don't always do the easy things first, but really prioritize the work that you're doing. The other thing that I would say is making sure that you're writing ideas down. So, you never know when you're going to get a pot of money. So you never know. Sometimes one of our grants, we just kind of got given to us and it just fell into our lap and we didn't have to apply for it. So always having those ideas ready to go so that when you get those opportunities, you're already ready to go full force with them. So that could be like a lot of times it's, when I'm getting my baby in a bath or going out on a walk or driving to work or whatever it may be, those are when those really creative wheels start ticking and I write those ideas down, and I encourage you all to do the same. Another thing is to find your mentor, find somebody who you can help guide you, can help connect you to others, can help, talk through your interests to help figure out where you want to go and where you want your career path to take you. The other thing is to maintain a portfolio. So whether that be projects that you're working on in school or experiences that you've had, volunteer opportunities, not just a resume portfolio, but also just a portfolio of work that you've done. And if it's, you created a handout for the food pantry, saving those things, because those are always things that you can lean back on to say, like, this is some of the work that I've done, and have a portfolio to look back on to really show that work. The next thing is to eliminate perfectionism. I think I say this over and over again because it was such a big learning experience, is that when you want to do something and you want to do it perfectly, you're more likely to push that off. You're less likely to have great time management because you're like, I am going to push this off until I was going to move to a different seat. Hold on. I'm going to move over here. Hold on one second, y'all. Okay. Sorry. I have a feeling that that's a lot of background noise. Anyways, what I was going to say is I think that doing, when you set yourself up to want to do work perfectly, you're more likely to push it off. And in doing that, you may end up pushing it off until the last minute and not have the opportunity to even do the perfect work that you've set yourself up and expected yourself to do. And so I think the most important thing is just to do it, just to put it down. You can always go back and edit. You can always go back and do this, but strive for excellence and put that work forward when you're ready to put that work forward. Don't keep pushing it off until you have the right time or 4 hours to dedicate to it versus 30 minutes. You just got to put that pen to paper. The next thing is discover what drives you. So, what are those driving forces? Is it you want to, uh, serve the greater population? Is it that you want to good money? Is it that, is it your family? Is it your, overall health? Is it, what are those drivers that really get you and reinforce the work that you're doing? And then um, I think recognizing, and this is something that I've learned with my public health intern, is really recognizing that feedback goes both ways. So making sure that you give feedback respectfully, but recognizing that, if you have a supervisor or you have a preceptor, making sure that you have that proper, respectful, open communication so that you can give feedback. I always tell my intern, and maybe this is specific for each person, but I always tell my intern, I'm like, tell me what I need to work on. Like, I want to know ways to grow so that I can best support all of the people in the future who I may be working with and best support them in the work that they're doing and things that I may not recognize that I need to change or grow upon as well. And don't be afraid to get feedback and don't be afraid to ask questions. Sometimes that can be hard and intimidating, but it's important. And this is the time that you get to ask questions and ask questions of people. Even there's no stupid question. And I always say, the answer to your question when a question is not asked is always going to be no. Always going to be no if you don't ask it. You never, I mean, there have been so many times where I'm like, hey, do you want to form this partnership? Or hey, do you have these resources? And something has grown out of it that has been an unexpected benefit as well. And lastly, I think this is something that I'll reiterate, especially while in school, it's important to know this is know your worth and be confident. Be confident in the work that you're doing. You know your experience, you know the work that you're doing, you know the schoolwork that you're doing, you know the volunteer work that you've done. Know your worth and be confident in that and know that what you are valued. And then let me see, I think, okay. A couple of learning lessons over the years. One is that if there's an industry that you're interested in getting into, do reach out to somebody who may be in that, whether it be connecting with your professors to get them to connect you with somebody. But do an informational interview. Find out what they do on an everyday basis, what a day in the life looks like, how they got into their career. A lot of people have, we think that it's very straightforward, but a lot of people have some very windy pathways to getting to what they're doing. And maybe that's not something they ever thought that they were going to be doing. And it's a great opportunity to really learn how others got to where they are and what they're doing in their job. And if that's something that you actually want to do as well. Also, I'll reiterate this again. I've said this before, but find your network and maintain that communication. So don't reach out to, and don't hesitate to reach out for your needs in your network. I was just talking to my husband about this last night. I was like, there may be somebody who I haven't talked to in 5 years, but they're, in this industry that is exactly where I'm looking to partner with. I, Reach out to them. It never hurts to ask. Like you said, like I said, the question never asked, the answer is always going to be no. So if I reach out to that person and I don't hear back, that doesn't harm me. But if I reach out to them and I hear back from them and they are interested in forming a partnership, then that benefits both sides of it as well. Um, Also, remember that internships are interviews. So this is the opportunity to ask questions, gain learning experience, and really, put your best work forward. And then I I like this quote. I saw this and I was like, this sounds like a quote for my life. Inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard. It's really hard to look at a project and see everything that needs to happen. Like our training that we had this past weekend, it was a huge event and there were so many logistical things that had to happen, much less getting prepared to do the presentations and all those variety of things. So break it down feel that sense of accomplishment along the way and break it down into little baby steps. Lastly, find your outlets and ways to release. So whether that be getting outside or going on a walk or connecting with families or, FaceTiming with somebody across the nation who you haven't caught up with in a while or exercising or cooking, whatever it may be, find your outlet and your ways to release all of that energy throughout the day. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch base on a couple of tips throughout the interviewing process is be confident, know your worth, know what you are valued at, and bring that to your interview. Think about your experiences, think about the work that you've done, and be confident in what you've done. You were there for a reason. You got chosen to be part of that interview for a reason. Another tip is to research the organization. So there's a lot of benefit if you already have some awareness of that organization and the programs that they're running. If you're already have ideas where it's like, hey, I don't see this happening, this could be a potential thing. Bringing some of those ideas to the table as well. Always prepare questions to ask, even, rack your brain. Sometimes I have a hard time asking questions in the moment because I'm just thinking about everything else going on in the interview. So it's important to prepare those questions ahead of time, even if you don't get the opportunity to ask them. Have those questions ready to go if you're asked about that as well. Next thing is practice, practice, practice. So practice in front of the mirror, practice for your peers, practice for your family, practice in front of your dog or your cat, whatever it may be. Just having that opportunity to talk and talk and talk and have that opportunity to talk through those various interview questions, will be a good opportunity. So you'll feel it's already going to be nerve wracking being in an interview. It's always something that I've never gone into an interview once without feeling nervous about it. But at the same time, when you have the opportunity to practice, those words will come more naturally, even when you're feeling those nerves and that nervousness. Identify your strengths and examples. So that this is looking at your strengths that you have and examples of how you implemented that strength. So whether it may be, we worked on a business plan and it took a lot of project management and I led this group and we really broke it down into step by step. We had the opportunity to present, thinking about those examples of maybe one of your skills is leadership and you can talk about that. Maybe it's one of your leadership opportunities. Maybe if you're one of the NSN officers, talking about that leadership experience and how that's impacted you and how you have exemplified that in the work that you're doing. Next is understand your opportunities for growth. So knowing, those areas that may be weaknesses at the time and are things that you can continue to grow in. I know I have learned a ton about prioritizing my time, and I've always been overarchingly good at time management, but at the same time, it's really easy to get into the cycle of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna, if it's an exam, like I'm gonna study the things I know and then push off the things I don't know because those are much harder. When really it's important to do the hard things first and then get into the easy things. So there's always opportunities for growth, and knowing those things is important to be able to talk about through your interview as well. And lastly, as I mentioned, know your worth. So research area-based salaries and remember to add up when you're having a conversation about salary. Don't just look at the number itself, but also consider the benefits that are provided, the payment for travel. So if it's a meal stipend or if it's travel stipend for mileage, or if you receive bonuses throughout the year. So really looking at that as a whole, because your salary is not just the salary that you receive, but it's all of those additional things on top of that as well. But most importantly, I fought for my salary when I came into the state agency. I know they looked at my educational experience as solely educational experience and did not look at my internships as actual work experience because I didn't get paid for them. And I fought for that and said, and coming into this, I got my master's in this. I worked in these internships for multiple weeks on end in this thing. Like, this is valuable experience and this is adding to the work that I do. And they increased my salary based on that. So be an advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask, and trust in that, in knowing your worth and knowing your value as well. I think that's okay. We're at the end. Again, I apologize for all of the background noise, but just adds a little character to the presentation today. You're welcome to write down my email. You're welcome to ask me any questions. I am here. I was only just, I graduated officially from my master's in 2018. So I, have some of that fresh knowledge on what I was hoping to learn and, what I've learned over the years. So ask me any questions. No question is silly, and, reach out if anything arises.
I don't see any questions. Um, I will ask, what class was the most impactful? Like any nutrition courses you took, whether it be undergrad or master's, that plays into effect in your day-to-day like life as an RD.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, one of the classes that was the most impactful was my nutrition counseling class. And interestingly enough, like when you are in the nutrition counseling class, you're directly talking about here's how we work with patient, or here's how we work with clients, here's how we work with our patients, here's how we, have some of those communications with, to elicit feedback and really help them to be um, to develop their own goals in that way. And I think that honestly was one of the most impactful uh, classes because it's not just directly related to counseling, but it's really just overarching communication skills. I mean, that class made me a better parent, it made me a better employee, it makes me more prepared to be a manager as I shift into some of those roles. So I think that that was one. And then I also, not necessarily, I guess just more overarchingly, is I really enjoyed the senior seminar because it was an opportunity to hear from people who are doing all kinds of work in the nutrition field. And I was able to connect and say, like, oh, I don't like, I like that job sounds great, but it's not necessarily something that I'm interested in doing. But I always have on the back burner that these are all different options. And I think
Mhm.
that job really, or that class really taught me that you can really make this nutrition career what you want of it. And if you see an organization where they don't have an opening for somebody in nutrition focus, make your job, make your case, like advocate for yourself, let them know that, they really need somebody nutrition minded on that team as well.
Thank you. You're a role model. I love you. Thank you for I love watching this again. I feel like hearing it the second time around for me at least, it was like I got to hear like the bits and pieces that I missed the first time you presented in senior seminar, and I really enjoyed your presentation again. Do we have any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just really wanted to thank you again, Diana, because everything that you've said has been so insightful and just sharing your experience and your story. It's just, you can really tell that you're very passionate about the work that you do. And I just really wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you guys. Absolutely. And like I said, like I've been in y'all's footsteps. I know it's hard to know what exactly you want to do, but I think it's finding that what you love doing and, not looking at others and saying, "Oh, but do I need to go down that path because everybody else is going down that path?" Like I think one of the biggest things I've learned from my experiences is just figuring out like, okay, I don't like this internship specifically, but I like working with people at this capacity, or I like doing this. So trust in your gut, trust in the things that you love, because overall, you're going to be the one who's living your life. You're going to be the one experiencing it. So do something that you love because that's going to be your driving force behind the work that you do. And sometimes maybe you need something to tide you over just to pay the bills at that time, but go towards moving something into something that you love doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your passion just exudes from the screen. Like it was definitely shown in person as well. It makes me excited to because I'm applying this cycle, so I'm really excited to see like what the future holds for me, and hopefully I can like stay in touch with you once I actually become an RD as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I had a conversation with somebody who had reached out from the after the nutrition presentation last time, and I'm like, I don't, I don't care if it's a year from now. If y'all have questions, if you have something that you're like, hey, I'm looking for something in an opportunity in this field, please reach out to me. Like I'm very laid back. Just connect. I will be part of. I said this in the class here. I was like, I'll be part of your network if you're just looking for, contacts and somebody to, help to guide you. Please email me. I've been in your footsteps. I know how important that is. So continue doing what y'all are doing. Thank you so much for having me here today. Best of luck in all of y'all's. If you're graduating soon, best of luck with that. If you're applying for the CP, best of luck with that. If you're a, we may have a variety. If you're a junior, any of those ordeals, best of luck with it. Reach out to me if any questions that come up. But thank you guys so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Diana. Really appreciate you greatly. Before we leave, let's see. We have a couple announcements. If you're interested in becoming an NSN officer, the application is due this Friday at 11:59. We also have one last kind of table event for the month. It's from 10 to 12 tomorrow at the Student Center East lobby area. And if you're a graduating senior and you would like to receive a graduation cord, please email our Dr. Coordinator, Jackie. And that's it. These are our volunteer opportunities if you guys still need places to volunteer at. And oh, there's that. But I sent that email out earlier. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diana. Appreciate you.
Thanks all. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.